Hello and welcome to the Career Success Podcast. I'm Jason Connolly. If you're a regular listener, it's great to have you back, but if you're new, welcome to the show. In this series every week, we speak to the biggest names in business all across the globe. We talk about their career stories, the lessons learned, how they overcome challenges, and what success habits they practice. Practical advice to help you in your career. If you have a passion for business, then this is the podcast for you. In this episode, I'm joined by Christina Eanes, based just outside of Washington, D.C. in the US. Christina is a former FBI violent crime analyst and senior manager, now author, speaker, podcast, YouTube channel host, and self-improvement guru. Christina specialises in super achieving and is on a mission to help others achieve more in life, mainly by getting out of their own way, and currently does this through her books, podcast series, professional development courses, and keynote speeches. Christina's newest book, Life is an Escape Room, applying lessons learned from successful escape leads to achieve more in life, demonstrates how the skills you gain playing escape rooms with the intention will make you more successful in all aspects of your life. Escape rooms are a fun way to learn about perception, communication, leadership, how to have better relationships, and so much more. Christina, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So there's so much I want to talk about throughout this episode, but to start off by telling us about you and your career, because it just sounds so interesting.
It has been extremely fascinating for myself as well. But I did start out in the field of law enforcement as an analyst. So I started out with a local police department in California in the U.S. And I had so much fun doing that it was a general crime analyst that I decided, well, first of all, I wanted to impact change on a greater level. So I decided, okay, let's go join the FBI. And I joined as a violent crime analyst.
Wow.
A non-gun toter in all of my positions. So not an agent or a detective or a police officer. But I did start out as a violent crime analyst. And I really enjoyed that because I was able to help local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies with their violent crimes. So I'd do comparisons, see what cases popped up where that seemed similar, and then I would get those agencies talking, and hopefully, a few times at least that I know of, put a few serial killers and serial rapists behind bars, or help them, I should say. I was part of that effort. But I knew I couldn't do that my entire career because I was continually looking for bodies on the side of the road. It's just part of being in that life, right?
Well, I was a police officer. I can relate.
Yep. So you know.
It's. I think to people that haven't worked in law enforcement, I don't know if it's the same with you, with what you've done. There's a certain, how do I put this, kind of culture of it's not the most positive place to be, and I think
Yes.
people can probably understand why that might be, and I think you become very cynical as a human being, and I think when you start, going into these absolutely terrible things, and you're dealing with that on a day-to-day basis, I kind of felt it dehumanized me a bit.
Yeah. Well, and you get a really bad sense of humor.
Oh, you do.
It's
I
horrible. It's coping mechanism.
It is a coping mechanism, and laughter is a good one. But I think to anyone that doesn't work in law enforcement, I think it's one of those things you have to be there and worn the t-shirt to really understand what
Exactly.
we're talking about. But please tell us
Yes.
more.
So anyway, I decided I wanted to stop looking for bodies on the side of the road, and I wanted a promotion. So I went and helped the FBI develop their leadership development program. So we trained anywhere from line level up to executive level leaders on anywhere from coaching, feedback, talking to people as humans, all of that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And I fell so much in love with that once my kids left the nest, I decided, hey, I'm going to open up my own business and do this. And that was about 7 years ago. And I have been loving life since then, doing anything I can in relation to helping others improve themselves.
And I'm guessing that your career in the FBI, it's obviously equipped you with the skills that have made you very successful in business.
Yeah, it has. Actually, what's funny is the violent crime position, I think, is the one that has equipped me the most in owning my own business. Whereas the senior manager in the leadership development program helped me with the content of my business. Sounds a little weird, but let me explain. So, being a representative of the FBI and going into those local, state, and federal agencies that weren't FBI, there was a certain level of trust you had to build very quickly with a cynical group of folks, a suspicious group of folks.
Yeah.
For the most part, right? Because I mean, in law enforcement, we do get a little cynical, as you said, and we get a little suspicious of people. So, being a representative of the FBI, I'm not sure if you've seen, and some of the media is familiar with FBI coming in and taking over local cases,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, et cetera, right? So there was a little bit of overcoming that. So building those trusting relationships to get officers and detectives to trust me to submit their cases to me in order to assist them. So all of that relationship building really
Mm.
helped me develop the main part of my business, which is bringing in more business, right? Yeah, so that really did it's almost like different pieces of my life brought in what I needed to be successful to all of this part of my life, if that makes sense.
Really makes sense to me because even in my business life, I didn't have a particularly great time in the police, and I've spoken about it on many podcasts before, so I'm not going to rehash out this story for people who have listened to this story many times in previous episodes. But I think the skills that I got really equipped me because I think it builds a lot of strength from within, and especially
Yes.
when you're going to, the worst day in someone's life, and a lot of people might think, "Well, how does this connect to business?" It's the people aspect. It's
Yeah,
connect.
relationship building.
It is, and I think what you're saying about going in, and obviously the criminal justice system is very different in America, and I understand that when the FBI come in, it's probably had quite a lot of resistance from these local law enforcement not wanting to give you or maybe they did, I don't know, maybe they were like, yes, you've arrived, here you go, Christina, please take it.
Depends. Yeah. Yeah, it depends on the agency's experiences in the past, but it was a lot of relationship building
Mm.
involved in that. And then and I love what you also brought in. I mean, to own your own business and be an entrepreneur, you need resilience. You need a can-do attitude. You need a whatever the obstacle is, I can overcome it. And a lot of that was built through those experiences.
For sure. And so you've been kind of devising. So we'll kind of talk about, what it is that you now do and what you've led on to do. But you develop programs. Tell us more about kind of the programs and the work that you do at the moment. And it's really interesting to hear how, the FBI and your law enforcement experience kind of led on to this because to a lot of people, this wouldn't sort of seem like a natural progression. And I
Yeah.
imagine when you left the FBI, please tell me if I'm wrong, but when I left the police, people were like, "Why are you leaving? This is a job for life." So please tell us about your experience of actually taking the initiative to even go through that kind of transition of even leaving the agency.
Oh, of course. Yeah. So interesting. I started out as an entrepreneur when I was a kid. You name it, I would find some way to make money from it. Whether
Me too.
yes. Yeah. And so I'd be buying all these cool toys as a kid and boom boxes, aging myself here, and all of that
Mhm.
stuff. So it was almost like a return to that. And I don't think people were surprised when I did say I was leaving because they knew the Chris has an entrepreneur kind of mindset. She's got a personality to be an entrepreneur. So it just was a fit. And some people are like, well, this is what I need to do for my entire life. Others like, okay, it fits, go do it. I'll say I knew you when or whatever. But yeah, so that was that part of the leaving. But and it has been a progression. I go through different phases. So what I try to do, not phases, stages, things
Chapters.
I like. Yes, chapters. I like that. Yeah. So I built my business for that so that I could grow. So I have one part of my business, the most stable part that stays the same, I mean, is I have a catalog of courses that I offer to companies, usually larger companies.
Mm.
And I have several coaches and instructors, and we go in and do trainings such as coaching, feedback, accountability, leadership, emotional intelligence, those kind of things. So we have a ready-made courses ready to go. People just generally, different companies will sign up for a few workshops a month and we go in and do them. So that's the main basis. And then there's that creative side that I get to do. Like with you, I get to do I have my podcast, the Quit Bleeping Around podcast, and that came out of that first book I wrote, Tips for Helping People Just Be More Successful in Life, whatever they decide to define that is. And then that second one I wrote a couple of years later because I was trying to think, okay, what comes easy to me? that it seems like some people struggle with. And at first I started out with time management, and then I realized that I actually manage my energy, not my time. So that's where Secret to Super
Mm.
Productivity came out. Yeah.
That's
And
a
of
really
course,
interesting concept. Can we just kind of
yeah,
stop on that concept
of
for a moment?
course.
Because I actually agree with that sentiment, but I've never necessarily looked at it like that. But I think that
Yeah.
that's what I do without realizing I do it. So I'll give you an example. I go into the office and it's about your energy level. You could work for 12 hours a day, but if your energy level is depleted, it's better to do less. How did you come up with that kind of philosophy?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always done it. I just didn't realize I did it, much like you, right?
Mm,
And until I started, because when I was trying to think of, okay, I'm ready to write another book. What should I write on? And I'm really good at being productive. Like it comes easy. And then I was trying to, and then I went through the analysis and the research and stuff, and I did realize it's because I naturally harness my energy. And a lot of people think they're held hostage essentially to their energy levels. But I like to look at it as a budget that we have
mm,
our natural energy levels that we start out with every day,
yeah.
but that we can also make more deposits than we do withdrawals by knowing, and I call them energy consumers, which are those withdrawals from your bank account, your budget account, your energy budget account, and
Mm.
then energy creators, which are those deposits. And then being able to be so much aware of what those are for you that you can essentially manipulate your energy levels for whatever you need to accomplish that day, that week, that month, that kind of thing. So it put a system around it essentially.
Really interesting, and especially what you say about depositing and withdrawing. I use that same analogy from a relationship perspective. So you get
Yep.
people that always want to withdraw from a relationship, and then you get those
Yeah,
kind people in life that are depositors, and that's when you tend to find that a relationship breaks down, is when the depositing and the withdrawing are imbalanced.
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, really good analogy. So that kind of, as you were saying, that kind of led you on to think, this is the next book, this is the idea. And it sounds to me like that was a natural talent, like you were racking your brains on what you could write about, but
Yep.
the answers were laying kind of right in front of you.
Yep. Each book has kind of revealed itself. And then that third one
Mm.
came a couple of years later. And of course, like you, each book I have, the entrepreneur mindset, I have turned into some way to use that, repurpose it, if you will, like so a speech, a course, turn that into YouTube videos, etc. So that one, yeah, I'm actually working on a course for that one because I wanted to dive deeper into it and revisit an online course. I have a in-person work or a instructor-led workshop that I have for that one. But then my daughter had her 21st birthday a few years ago. And she told us about this thing called an escape room, which at first I thought was really stupid, but I thought, okay, it's your birthday. We'll go do it. So we did. And let's see, we actually hit our 500th escape room this past weekend
You're
as we're
joking.
recording this. Nope, we hit the 500 milestone this past weekend.
Wow, that
Yeah.
that sounds like a tour around the US.
Well, we've done them at the point of this recording, we've done them in 20 countries and 22 states.
That is fascinating.
I
What's
know.
your top
So,
tip for breaking
oh,
out of an escape room?
like the top location?
What's your top tip for being able to get
Oh,
out of them
tip.
successfully?
Okay.
That's
Mm.
pending that you're good at getting out of them, but I imagine that you are if you've done
So,
5.
well, we have a 97% escape rate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we have not made it out of 14 rooms out of the
But is that because
500.
the escape room wasn't very good or because your skills are
Yeah, we'll
bad?
go with that. No, I'm
Oh, right,
kidding.
okay.
There's a whole bunch of different reasons. 14 different reasons, as a matter of fact. But
Right.
let's see. Top tip would be go with the intention of having fun, not escaping.
Mm. I think that's
Because
a
when you
lovely
go in with that, I'm going to escape and I'm going to beat the leaderboard, which is the little board they have for whoever gets out the fastest, then that puts so much pressure. It makes the experience not as fun, and there's a bunch of emotions get involved.
mm.
Yeah, and it just ends up not being fun if you don't set the intention of making it fun.
What a lovely
But
thing to have done with your daughter.
oh
Do they
yeah.
roll out the red carpet when you come to one of these escape rooms? Chris, you've arrived. We're so glad to see you.
It's
You're a
we've been
veteran.
recognized a few times. It's
Oh,
been kind of fun.
and this leads so nicely onto the book.
Yes.
Life is an escape room. Apply lessons learned from successful escapees, and that was the
Yes.
word, to achieve more in life. And I love what I was saying, and I think this paves the way into the conversation. Find out how a booby-trapped Egyptian tomb, following a pirate's treasure map, and a Sherlock Holmes mystery with an obstacle course, a hedge maze, and a playground can make your life better. Tell us more about this. It sounds
Oh, yeah.
wonderful.
So, of course, I had to turn that next hobby, etc., into some sort of part of my business, right? So,
Of
but
course.
of course. But so as we were going through and doing these escape rooms, and this is where we were probably on, I don't know, we were over 200, I think, when we started writing the book. We realized, and I say we because my husband co-wrote it with me on this one, and he's the one that I mainly do all the rooms with, just us. But we realized that there was so much learning to be had in a matter of fact, after every room that we do, even if there's only like 10 minutes between rooms, like we did 6 on Sunday. So even if there's like 10,
Wow.
we take a moment to write down our learning, and we realize each and every room is like just filled with things that you can learn about yourself. And the main ones being that I cover in my speech are perception, emotional intelligence, and communicating with each other. Because escape rooms have mainly been used as team building exercises in the corporate environment when you think about learning. But we realized you could use it for yourself in learning. And one of the things, like what we were just talking about, when you put this pressure on yourself that I'm going to get out, I have to get out, I have to beat the whatever the
clock.
yes, I have to, well, the clock, or I have to be the fastest person to get out. Whenever you put that in there, that involves emotions, right? So one of the main things that
Mm.
we really focus on is emotions and managing our emotions when we're in those kind of environments. Because if someone's tired, they can get cranky, or
Yeah.
whatever. If they start getting competitive, they get cranky. So one of the main things that I love that it teaches is emotional intelligence, how to, one, be aware of your emotions so you can regulate them so that you can better interact with others. And again, law enforcement actually
Mm.
informs that learning as well, talking about bringing all this
Mm.
full circle, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And emotional intelligence is actually, I think, my biggest. I'm not academic in any way, but what
Uh-huh.
I am is extremely emotionally intelligent, and this is what I teach people about every day.
Yep.
And I think and I'm digressing slightly, but even with, let's take the pandemic for instance, businesses that have done well, a lot of people, this has sparked emotion, and you need to make business decisions. Yes, emotion has a place, I think, in decision
Yeah.
making. Yes, it does. There is definitely a place for it, but you need to think logically, and it's about the primitive brain and the logical part of the brain,
Yep.
and being able to separate that is definitely something law enforcement teaches you. Because when you come roll up to a serious incident, if you're thinking with your emotions, you're going to make bad judgment calls. And these are kind of things, all these little talents that I say little, that's not the right, all these amazing talents, sorry, I'll
Yes.
use a better adjective there.
There we go.
These talents that you've got are things that you've picked up through the years, but I think it's absolutely fascinating how you've kind of taken these talents that you've got, you've processed them, you've delved into them deeper, you've kind of analyzed them, you've been through this thought process, you've applied it in every kind of way, and that's really what's paved the way to this place that you're at in your life, which just sounds like a fascinating place to be.
Oh, yeah. I'm loving life.
And what a lovely thing to do with your daughter as well, to go to all these things. What a lovely life lesson to be teaching her.
Oh, yeah. Except for she's not angry. She's a little perturbed that we've only brought her to 100 of them instead of, like all 500.
Oh, well, I won't ask over what time period this is. I can only imagine. So the actual book, you mentioned that a big part of it is kind of stripping out emotions. But tell us more. I appreciate we're never going to kind of fully unpack this book or even come close to it in
Oh,
this
yeah.
episode. But tell us more about it, because it just sounds like such a fascinating concept to maybe people who might be listening to this episode who perhaps haven't come across some of these concepts that me and we've come from a similar world.
Yeah.
To other people who are listening on the outside, these sounds like interesting concepts, but tell us more.
Oh, yeah. Well, on the emotions, I'm not necessarily stripping out emotions, just using them to your advantage.
Mm. Mm.
So there's that one. Perception. So there's so many types, and escape rooms are really well designed ones they play with your perception on things. So they really mess with those cognitive biases that we end up having. And I love it because it helps us practice our perceptions. So it's funny, we were in a room not too long ago. Well, actually, we just went into another room, but our 500th room actually had a zombie in it. But prior to that, we were in a room with a zombie that the game master, before you go into a room, the person who's going to guide you through that process gives you a briefing on what you're to expect, right? And this game master had said there will be a zombie in the room. They will not be chained, because normally when you run into that, they're chained. But they won't actually come after you, and they can't tag you, which means you have to freeze for the rest of the game. They can't tag you until you find a Nerf gun. Well, my husband didn't hear that. He wasn't listening very well to the briefing.
You're going to a different league of escape room to what I've been to, and I've been to one that's been no zombies and no Nerf guns. I can't.
I know, it is unusual to have a live actor in it, right?
This is just typical America, isn't it? We have an escape room here. Yeah, America, there would be live zombies and actors. I feel like there's a different world out there.
That's it. Experienced. Or should we say undead zombies that are live actors? No, I'm kidding. But anyway, so yes, unusual. Actually, some of the best ones we've been in have been Europe, but this one in particular was in the US. And so my husband didn't hear that. And so here's an example of perception is reality, right? So what he heard is there's a zombie in there, and if it tags you, you can't move. Right? So that's what he heard. So he was so nervous the entire time he was in this room. He was looking over his shoulder. He was having trouble concentrating, and I have permission to tell these stories. So I wasn't. I heard it. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to mess with the zombie, because it's like a slow moving zombie. It wasn't a World War Z zombie. It was like, I don't know, Talking Dead zombie. So I finally got him. I said, look, he can't mess with us until we find our Nerf guns. So he can't touch us. And besides, he's slow moving. We can just continue to walk around and avoid him.
Distracted by the zombie.
Exactly. So he finally came around and wasn't distracted. But it's funny because our 500th room that we did had an actor in it, a zombie. And he purposely went in thinking, okay, this is going to be fun. No matter what, we're going to get out, because we do most of the time. And so he had a totally different experience in this past room, because he went in with the intention of, this is going to be fun. But it's just funny. Our perception creates our reality. And then, of course, they do things to mess with our cognitive biases and the typical ways that our brain gets us messed up. And it really helps you train yourself to overcome that.
And I think you make some really great points to people, and not just your own individual perception, but understanding other people's perception, and not just perception, their perspective.
Yeah.
It allows you to really, this is where I think so many companies go wrong and they lose people. And I see this every single day in recruitment. They don't look at other people's perceptions or perspectives, and they make decisions based on solely their perspective. And then they lose people, and I spoke to someone actually really interesting yesterday who said to me, and he was a really big chief executive, and he said to me, the ability to see other people's perspective in life is the ability to lead successfully. And when he just said that, I just thought, that isn't, even though I know that deep down, what you just said, it really hit a chord with me. And, this is the reason why I absolutely love doing podcasts, because sometimes you have these things that you do, but you don't realize that you're consciously doing them. Because I don't know about you, Christina, but I find that in life, I'm running, next thing, move.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very rare that I stop, reflect. But it sounds to me, to you, that is kind of quite a natural thing that you stop to do, because that sounds like it's the process of how these books come about anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I had to train myself to do that, to stop and reflect, because that's really part of the self-improvement process, right? And I thought, if I'm teaching other people to do this, I better be able to do it. But we'll have a moment where you'll have 6 minutes on the clock to getting out of an escape room. And you need to take that 30 seconds to 60 seconds to stop, relax, calm down, and think about things, so that you can do that last 5 minutes in an amazing way, instead of just freaking out for that. I love that you brought up reflecting, because you can even do that in the last 5 minutes of an escape room. Spend 30 seconds
Yeah.
to do it, and it makes that last 5 minutes so much more powerful, much in life, right? If we spend a little bit of time reflecting,
Mm.
everything all the energy that we're putting forward is more intentional and more strategic versus just kind of all over the place.
I find everything you're saying so fascinating, and I think that what you've done with these escape rooms is you're using them in so many different ways, and what breaking down the kind of psychological process and that of the emotions and that of everything in regards to it. I can see why, while looking at the world through your lens for a moment, I can see why they're so enjoyable. And I can see
Yeah.
why it's become such a great hobby. Would you ever open up your own escape room using 500?
No.
Oh, okay.
Too much work. And
What?
I'd want to switch out the rooms like every few months because I'd get bored of them.
Yeah, I could. Well, yes, I can imagine it would be a very
Yeah.
complex sort of system that you have there.
So I
Um,
very much appreciate those that do that for us.
mm. What kind of advice would and I appreciate this is going to be somewhat generic, but and it's a challenging time at the moment. It's challenging no matter what you do. What advice would you give to people who are maybe kind of business owners or people out there at the moment? Through all your years of wisdom and experience, what would you say to people that might be struggling or finding business challenging?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Again, escape room analogy here, or metaphor, or simile, whatever it is. We once did a room in complete darkness, and it wasn't where you're just feeling around a room for things on the wall. We were actually going through tunnels, falling into foam pits, having to crawl up walls in complete darkness. And I thought this was a perfect analogy
I'm
for that.
laughing because I'm just imagining it now, and I can just yeah.
Uh-huh.
Please carry on.
Yeah, so but you're in the darkness, right? You don't know what's
Mm,
ahead of you. Kind of remember what's behind you, but you're so much in the moment, it's hard to figure out. So when you're there and you're stressed and you don't know what's coming, you just have to keep going. You just feel a little, feel a little forward, trust, go forward, know that no matter what, you'll be able to come out of this process. It may be successful, maybe you just learned more, right? But just keep going, and eventually there will be light at the end of that tunnel, like there was in that escape room. We just
mm.
had to keep trusting the process and moving forward.
And I think that's an absolutely beautiful anecdote to kind of leave the show on. I could talk to you for a very long time, but I would be in trouble for massively overrunning. If people want to find out more about you, Christina, or indeed they want to find out and even buy the book, and I must say on Kindle it's only £3.13 in the UK. What a
Yay.
bargain! What a bargain! Or one Audible book credit.
There you
And
go.
is it you speaking on the audiobook?
It is, yes.
Ah, fantastic. We love that. Tell us where people can go to connect with you, where they can go to find out more or indeed buy the book.
Awesome. So my main website is christinaeanes.com. The one for the book is lifeisAnescaperoom.com.
Fabulous. Christina, thank you so much for joining us. I've loved the conversation.
Oh, thank you. Me too.
That was Christina Eanes from just outside of Washington, D.C. in the US. I'm Jason Connolly. This is the Career Success Podcast. Until next time, goodbye.